And we're live again. Anthony Romeo, Wise Up. How everybody's doing all right today. Today we have a special guest like we have every time. This is our third season. We keep reaching out to amazing manufacturers, service providers, people that are providing value to various verticals such as education, enterprise space, data centers. Today we have our guest with us, Dwight Stewart from the IGOR, not IGOR, but IGOR. The question is, you want to learn more about smart buildings, dashboards, innovative lighting systems, and advanced PoE technology? Then listen up to this episode because Dwight's bringing a lot to the table. It's jam-packed with knowledge and information. So I beg you, I plead with you all. Thank you again for listening to us on Wise Up. We could be streamed on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Anchor. Also check us out on YouTube. We appreciate the views, the comments, the likes, and by all means, if again, you want to know more about intelligent lighting and what does it coincide with and all the different verticals and applications that could be provided with IGOR, Dwight is the guy to talk to. So Dwight, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So where are you coming from today?
Based in Des Moines, Iowa, where it's right now it is -5 degrees outside and even worse wind chills. So place you don't want to be at the moment anyway.
So you're not fishing anytime soon, unless it's ice fishing.
Yeah, exactly. Not much of that going on.
Yeah, so I am not in New York City today, but I love the skylight skyscrapers behind me, and I always like to keep that one up in mind. It's really the reason why I put this building up behind me is there's certain things going into effect right now in front of everybody's mind, and it's becoming more green, right? So as we talked to Dwight about IGOR and what it is as a manufacturer of, they're not providing lights, they're providing an intelligent platform that works with much more than lights and can give you so much more back on the return of your investment. So Dwight, tell us a little bit more about the product set solutions that IGOR is manufacturing and some of the software platforms that you're using to help people return on those investments.
Absolutely. Yeah, at first, that skyline makes me want to get back there. It had become kind of a second home for me over the last year because we do so much out there. And so it's such a wonderful place and I miss it. So the things that we really focus on when we boil down our company is to digitally advance the human condition within buildings. And how do we achieve that? We have a product platform that's called Nexos, and it's kind of like the name really portrays, is that it's bringing together all of these different systems. And really, we like to go beyond just the system level, where if with our node, with it being power over Ethernet, and I'll show you an example here, we can just connect any OT device, so things that aren't yet on the network. And by connecting a light or a sensor or an actuator like a pump or a fan or something, now you can bring those onto the network. You power those devices with power over Ethernet. So power over Ethernet can do 90 watts. You can connect that, it's powering that device, it's connecting it with that same Ethernet cable, it's connecting it back to the network, and then it's also cyber securing it right at that node as well. So you bring that node every, let's say 10 square feet in your building, you just drop in a node, you connect all these disparate types of devices. You don't have the traditional end-to-end infrastructure for lighting and for access control and for every little thing. Instead, you can just drop in this node and have these end devices connect up to that no matter what kind of end device they are. And now they share that infrastructure. So it reduces a huge amount of cost, 50% of your cost on your traditional infrastructure.
So question then, Dwight, you bring up some great points there. So in the case of you're connecting everything, so I'm assuming that it's open architecture. So the platform, you can connect with just about anything that has an IP address and support that on one network platform.
That's correct. Yes. Once you get it onto our node, then it connects to the software. The software connects to anything that has an IP address. So the software if something's connected via Wi-Fi or Ethernet, it can connect to those things as well through, we have a protocol plug-in system to allow for that. But anything that does not have an IP, so you can have a serial bus device, you can have USB devices, all can plug into this node, and then through this node, they get an IP. And that allows for you to use whatever device you want, just as you were saying. It's completely agnostic.
So there's some, yeah, so I was just going to say, so there's some systems out there that say you can only use our system with our parts, and your system is not that. And that's what I'm thinking it's, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread here, because you work with everybody. So, you know, there's no favoritism there, you know, completely agnostic, as you point out. You know, IGOR technology, with the Nexos technology, you're running more than just your lighting platform. You know, you're the full automation of going into a sea-level space where the blinds open up, the lumens are coming to the right amount. So as the sun is shining bright into the room, you don't need as much power going to it. So it brings up a question. So power consumption, can you dictate how much power is going to certain devices on this node and build that into the network platform on a schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. The nice thing about this approach is that every single device becomes addressable. So even if you're sharing, even if you have 5 different devices connect to this one node, and you can even daisy chain nodes so that you minimize the number of home runs back to network switches. But each one of those individual devices can be controlled. And so if you no longer want a certain light to have power, or if you want to dim it down, or you know, you have a lot of control with the lights. And not only can you control that one device, but every single one is also metered. And so by getting metering, you can have a closed loop system. I had a company previously to this one that we integrated to building control systems, brought up to a platform. We'd gamify the data so that we'd encourage behavioral change to reduce energy consumption. And it was that closed loop process of, when you see, it's kind of like driving in a hybrid car. When you see that mile per gallon gauge go up, then you realize, okay, what my behavior is right now is causing some poor efficiencies. Right. But now if I make some changes, you can start getting that immediate feedback. That's so incredibly valuable to get those closed loop systems. And whether they're through behavioral change or ultimately providing AIs and things like that, can drive those automated improvements and optimizations.
Yeah, and Darren, when you were describing that, I was thinking of something else. Is, you know, for many years we've had occupancy sensors throughout, you know, these enterprise space buildings, or even in your home where it's on off, but that's a data point, right? So that information, where is it going? It's going on off right now, but by taking that information, knowledge is power, right? Is what they say. So you could build out and understand how big of a footprint you would need. I would take it, you know, if you understand the existing footprint of an office and knowing how many square footage is, right? Because right now, what do? They go, I need 100 square foot per person, and I'm going to build out a floor based on that because HR told me we're hiring 10,000 people, so we need this much. But now, especially nowadays, we're living in more of a digital age than ever before, and some of us thrusted into that more so than others. Real estate's still expensive, and understanding the square footprint of, you know, cost per square footprint, or how much you can need or versus want, is a big deal, right? So by taking that information, that's gold right there. Forget about the cost of running the lights. You just like king, you're the king, you know, I'm not worthy, because that is terrific, man. Honestly, yeah. I mean, you don't have to be in technology. If you're listening to this show, you could be in the real estate development company and just understand that how big of a footprint you need in the enterprise space, because you have, you know, virtual employees, you have travel sales employees, you have C-level executives that have multiple offices. How often of a cycle are they in these buildings? You don't know that. You could assume that those data points and say, okay, I need 20,000 feet here, 50,000, 100,000 in New York. and 1 million square feet in, Tokyo, wherever. But that's really gold right there. And then when you were talking about that node and you were saying daisy chain, just for our listeners, that is category cable, not,
Correct.
yeah. So now you're going on low voltage cable. Is there a recommended cable category? Is it 5E or is it 6A?
Yeah, we'd say 5E at least, but category 6, that works as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're taking and the reason why I say 5E or 6 is there's cost associated to everything. It's a commodity at the end of the day. 5E is less expensive, and it could do the job. So there you go. Win-win. Then you're talking about labor hours associated with that. I mean, there's a world of things going on in my head right now saying you got to install this system. So for those of you who are listening to WISEUP, we're talking with Dwight Stewart, CTO and founder of IGOR Manufacturing. It's not a lighting switch, folks. It is a way of life. It's bringing everything on one communication platform, anything that has IoT systems. Is that a fair assessment, Dwight?
Yeah, it's an IoT platform. And, to your point, we have a number of customers at Hudson Yards, for instance, and more going in. And they're using our system in some very multi-dimensional and dynamic ways you were talking about space utilization. You can use that to better understand, especially in New York, where the space is quite expensive. So making sure you're not renting more space than you really need.
Right.
But not only using traditional motion sensors, but we can use Bluetooth beacons that can also be connected via USB to our node. Use that our bodies are mostly water. And so we actually absorb Bluetooth transmission. And so you can know approximately how many people are in a space just by how much absorption of Bluetooth transmission data is going from one Bluetooth transceiver at one corner to another one at the other corner of the room. And so really, it's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
Then we're putting people counting cameras. That's another thing that people are looking at. But there's multiple ways of doing, how detailed do you want to get, right? And there's multiple ways to do the same thing to verify the data. There's different ways to do it so that you can get different aspects of the same kind of context. But having it all in one platform, now not only can you use motion sensing for controlling the lights, you can use it we also have a backend integration, so you can use it for your HVAC, so you can, reduce the energy consumption for your heating, ventilation, air conditioning. You can also use it for security. So instead of just having peripheral security, where you have all these sensors everywhere anyway, might as well use that when you're supposed to be locked down in the middle of the night, you should be there, use it for security. But we could start taking that data and meshing it up in ways that the motion sensor was only used for lighting. Well, what if you want to know, should a person even be there? Well, if you have a Bluetooth badge, for instance, if someone walks into your data room, there's motion, so obviously someone's there, but is it authorized motion? If there's a Bluetooth tag that someone's emitting that says that person has authorization to be in that location, then it's authorized. But if there's no Bluetooth tag that's there that shows that person's authorized, then hey, that's unauthorized motion. Let's send someone to check it out. So there's so many different ways to use these sensors and data for so many different value propositions. It's very powerful.
Yeah, and then the other one that I was reading up on was with the UVC lighting and disinfecting, and saying, hey, look, wait a minute, we're in a global pandemic still, and it's definitely going to be front of mind and more conscious of cleaning regimens. And talk to us a little bit about the Nexus working with UVC lighting and how that integrates.
Yeah, the UVC lighting, it's a powerful thing in that it's easy to disinfect the air as well as surfaces. And it's solid state, so there's no moving parts, and it can be automated, so you don't have to worry about having people, and hopefully they clean the surfaces well enough, which there's studies, if you just have people wipe the surfaces, over time, there's, people just only clean about 50% of the surface. So to get a really auditable, reliable, consistent cleaning in place, you can just put the UVC lights in just like you would typical lights within a space. And there's an automated process where UVC, you don't want to be in the same room with it. So we verify via a number of the sensors just talked about that there's no one occupying the space.
Right.
We can detect if
safety
you're just
first.
sleeping. Safety first, absolutely. And the other nice thing about UVC is it doesn't penetrate through windows. At that particular wavelength, windows absorb the UVC transmission. So you can have a conference room that's completely glass all around it. You just have to make sure that the doors are closed, and then UVC doesn't bounce around. Whatever it touches, it pretty much absorbs. So you don't have to worry about light scattering. You could even do it in an open space, and as long as you make sure people aren't too close to that space, it's still okay, because it's not going to bounce around and find its way down corridors or things like normal light does. So using the sensors that we talked about, door closure sensor, occupancy sensing, then we have a touch screen. You just click, you want to activate it. We have a conference room kit, so you can just activate it in between scheduled conference room times. And then during the night, you can schedule that you want to run it for a longer period of time.
Right.
Typically between conference rooms, to get 99.9% disinfection, you can do that in about 20 minutes. If you want to do 6 degrees of 9 kind of thing, you might need a couple hours to do that, but you do that at night and for that deep disinfection. And then all that data is stored, so it's auditable, and you can understand how your facility's being used.
That's terrific. I mean, honestly, I'm not blowing smoke here. It's being just truthful. I mean, the fact that it's not a need. I mean, it's not a want, it's a need. What's going on today, it's dreadful, to think about it, but it's something that we have to be more mindful about moving forward in our everyday lives. And, being able to have all this at our fingertips, being able to control it, whether it be on a laptop, and I believe you could control this from your smartphone, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you can control from that touch screen automatically from any web browser, basically. So you're going to be able to take full control. But we really see when trying to think about what solution did we want to bring to market to be part of the solution of COVID is, we could have done contact tracing, automatically open doors so you didn't have to touch surfaces, shared surfaces. And those are all things that we're still looking at. And we can partner with other companies because of our open API. We can not only connect to end devices of any kind,
right,
be very agnostic on applications, but really see that if you look at history with different viruses that have been coming out, whether it's SARS or Zika, or there's just one thing after the next.
Right. It's not going to stop, unfortunately.
It's not going to stop. So even after this, there's going to be something else, and at least we'll be well prepared. We've learned so many different lessons from this experience. We'll be well prepared for the next one.
I mean, to some regard, some of these cleaning procedures that are now instituted in some of these facilities, airplanes and other establishments, they were definitely overlooked for several decades. And in a way, this was a wake-up call to people to be a little bit more conscious. Even in our own facilities, we always had a cleaning crew come into our facilities on bi-weekly basis. We ramped that up. We ensured that all the people that are not picking, packing, or making deliveries, they're working remotely, staying safely clear to mitigate risk. And then anybody that's coming into our facility, they're not allowed to gain access without temperature check, and they're also responsible for their own domain. So if they're touching anything at the end of the day or throughout the course of the day, they're responsible for wiping behind and cleaning up. But it's something that is a new way of life. So now that you can integrate this on one platform, controlling the UVC in a safe manner, that's just terrific. I mean, from the emissions, the overall IoT systems, as we both know, and we were talking about it before, is the local law 97 in particular in the city of New York, where for those are unaware of local law 97, this was a law that was passed in March of 2019. And it requires buildings over 25,000 square feet that were built prior to 2017 to reduce their emissions by 40% by 2030. And then again, by 80% by 2050. And we say, wow, into the future. But think about it, it's 2021 already. Some of these projects that are being designed today, they're not going to be installed until 2025. So it's coming fast. And so, I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think so. Just to give you an example of what we can achieve, we had an apartment building that it was fluorescent lights, and so this was specific to lighting. But just by putting in LEDs, you're obviously going to see a very significant improvement of around 40%. And then we saw when we activated our controls, which we meet all the ASHRAE 90.1 and Title 24 requirements. But things like what's your maximum dim level, what's your minimum dim level, using daylighting, motion, so forth. And those provided an additional about 30% improvement as well. And then we activated our analytics. And what we found was that people were moving in and out of these apartments, even in the middle of the night, even at 1 a.m, at pretty much every 5 minutes, there was someone moving around, not hanging out in the hallways, but just in and out of the doors. And this was in a suburb. So we were very surprised to see that. That actually caused our lighting to never go to a unoccupied mode, because we had those areas set to a greater than 5-minute timeout.
Right.
And so by using that data and understanding what's happening there, we were without doing a truck roll, just remotely. We also have an Azure-based cloud. And so that's where we saw these analytics. We decided based on that we would remotely modify the configuration of the site. We rezoned the floors so that they were smaller zones, and we put it as a 2-minute timeout just by making those. And then we saw another 2 weeks of data accumulate. We saved an incremental 50% energy. Wow. And it was really eye-opening, because we have a great deal of understanding, much more than the common person, as to how these systems should be set up. And so even with our best guess, it wasn't right. And most systems, they don't have data that comes back. So it's designed a certain way, it's architected, engineered, and they specify to the installers what should the timeouts be. And they hopefully do it correctly, but it's hard to verify because there's no data once again. But even if they do it right, the intended design is not necessarily the correct one. And so in ideal laboratory conditions, you'll see that every system saves 90% energy. That's just, because you can always set up a lab the way you need it to be. But in reality, the data becomes incredibly important, especially by having the data in the cloud, so that you can remotely validate and act as a partner for your customers, and create that customer relationship that, especially when you're dealing with a customer that might have repeat business for you, that they're going to see that as extremely valuable, and you're going to create a trusted relationship that makes you a partner. So we're very excited about the impact that our system can have, but also how we can enable an ecosystem of partners that we can really help drive their sales to end market as well.
Yeah, that's terrific. And New York is just one of many states that are focused on this. I mean, I was saying earlier, the U.S. Green Building Council has named New York number 5 out of the top 10 in those who are certified as LEED Gold, showing their commitment of high-level certification in energy. So, just to name a couple of states out there like Massachusetts, Washington, Illinois, Colorado, Maryland, California, Virginia, Texas, and Nevada, of all places. These are 10 states out of 50 states that are all mindful of this same. So maybe it's not local law 97 in Colorado. Off the top of my head, I don't know every law, and I'm not going to presume to know every law, but I know that for a fact with the U.S. Green Council, they are focused on, those 10 states particularly are focused on reducing their emissions, and how to do that is working with products like IGOR. So if you are listening to WISEUP podcast again out there, we're talking with Dwight Stewart, CTO and founder of IGOR. It is a manufacturer of, I wouldn't call it an intelligent lighting manufacturer. What would you summarize yourself as, Dwight?
Really, IoT solution provider or
IoT solution provider. That's it. It's a platform that you need to buy today. So if you're listening again to Wise Up, which could be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, and we'll also be airing this on our YouTube channel. So be sure to catch us out on www.wisecomponents.com. Dwight, I don't want to cut short, but I do want to hear about IGOR University. What's that about? And can I go?
Yeah, absolutely. And really quick before I do that, I also want to make the comment when it comes to sustainability. One of the things that's becoming more and more important are DC microgrids. And one of the benefits of our system is that, there's lots of ways to create DC power, but on the demand side, the distribution of DC power, PoE is what we use, and it's a native DC platform that is perfect. So that's where we're seeing a lot of potential opportunity, as well as getting into DC microgrids and completely self-sustained net zero buildings and so forth. So to your question, IGOR University, that is a program, the technology is new. We're dealing with sales channels and end customers that aren't familiar with this approach.
Right.
So by having an educational, evangelism is a lot of my time, and having a formal, what we call a university, but basically a 1 or 2 day program that people can attend. It used to be in person. We look forward to that happening again,
right.
But right now it's virtual. And we're looking to build e-training courses and those kind of things where you can get certified. But it really just creating an immersive experience that allows for people to understand the technology to the point where they feel comfortable installing it or adopting it. And it's something that can be attended by end customers, by channel partners, anyone that might be touching or using the technology.
Excellent. So you had said that it's virtual now. Do you have any other virtual events that are upcoming that we should be made aware of?
That's a great question. I know that we have a constant list of virtual events that are going on.
It could be found on your website easily
Absolutely.
enough, I'm sure, during the events page. So I would urge that you all listening out there check out IGOR on the website. Dwight, just read off the URL for everybody listening.
Yep, it's www.igor-tech.com. So that's Igor-Tech.
And we'll put all this content that we've been talking about today in our show notes, so do be sure to check it out. Again, it could be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, or however you stream. We'll also be looking for the comments, as we've been receiving a lot. So thanks again to all our listeners out there. And, in interest to understanding what's behind the walls and what's making it all work and what's making it all come together is IoT platforms such as IGOR. So Dwight, thank you again so much for taking time out of your day. And I hope you stay warm, and soon enough we could, possibly both be in New York City again and sharing a cocktail on a warm day.
I look forward to that.
So thank you again for your time. And folks, thank you again. I'm Anthony Romeo. No tie, wearing pants. This is Wise Up. We had a blast. Thanks again.